Chapter 4 reported the cosmic ray counter. Connett started and dropped his pencil. Damn! The physicist looked toward the far corner, back at the Geiger counter on the table near that corner, and crawled under the desk at which he had been working to retrieve the pencil. He sat down at his work again, trying to make his writing more even. It tended to have jerks and quavers in it, in time with the abrupt, proud hen noises of the Geiger counter. The muted whoosh of the pressure lamp he was using for illumination, the mingled gargles and bugle calls of a dozen men sleeping down the corridor in Paradise House formed the background sounds for the irregular, clucking noises of the counter, the occasional rustle of falling coal in the copper-bellied stove, a soft, steady drip, drip, drip from that thing in the corner. Connett jerked a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, snapped it so the cigarette protruded, and jabbed the cylinder into his mouth. The lighter failed to function, and he pawed angrily through the pile of papers in search of a match. He scratched the wheel of the lighter several times, dropped it with a curse, and got up to pluck a hot coal from the stove and the coal tongs. The lighter functioned instantly when he tried it. On returning to the desk, the counter ripped out a series of chucking goughs as a burst of cosmic rays struck through it. Connett turned to glower at it and tried to concentrate on the interpretation of data collected during the past week, the weekly summary. He gave up and yielded to curiosity or nervousness. He lifted the pressure lamp from the desk and carried it over to the table in the corner. Then he returned to the stove and picked up the coal tongs. The beast had been thawing for nearly 18 hours now. He poked at it with an unconscious caution. The flesh was no longer hard as armor plate, but had assumed a rubbery texture. It looked like wet, blue rubber glistening under droplets of water like little round jewels in the glare of the gasoline pressure lantern. Connett felt an unreasoning desire to pour the contents of the lamp's reservoir over the thing in its box and drop the cigarette onto it. The three red eyes glared at him sightlessly, the ruby eyeballs reflecting murky, smoky rays of light. He realized vaguely that he had been looking at them for a very long time, even vaguely understood that they were no longer sightless, but it did not seem of importance. Of no more importance than the labored slow motion of the tentacular things that sprouted from the base of the scrawny, slowly pulsing neck. Connett picked up the pressure lamp and returned to his chair. He sat down, staring at the pages of mathematics before him. The clucking of the counter was strangely less disturbing, the rustle of the coals in the stove no longer distracting. The creak of the floorboards behind him didn't interrupt his thoughts as he went about his weekly report in an automatic manner, filling in columns of data and making brief summarizing notes. The creak of the floorboard sounded nearer. Chapter 5 Blair came up from a nightmare-haunted depths of sleep abruptly. Connett's face floated vaguely above him. For a moment it seemed a continuance of the wild horror of the dream, but Connett's face was angry and a little frightened. Blair, you damn log, wake up! Huh? The little biologist rubbed his eyes, his bony, freckled fingers crooked to a mutilated child fist. From the surrounding bunks, other faces lifted to stare down at them. Connett straight up. Get up, you get a lift on. Your damn animals escaped. Escaped what? Chief Pilot Van Wall's bull voice roared out with a volume that shook the walls. Down the communication tunnels, other voices yelled suddenly. The dozen inhabitants of Paradise House tumbled in abruptly, Barkley, stocky and bulbous in long woolen underwear, carrying a fire extinguisher. The hell's the matter? Barkley demanded. Your damn beast got loose. I fell asleep about 20 minutes ago, and when I woke up the thing was gone. Hey Doc, the hell you say those things can't come to life? Blair's blasted potential life developed a hell of a lot more potential and walked out on us. Copper stared blankly. It wasn't earthly, he sighed suddenly. I guess earthly laws don't apply. Well, it applied for leave of absence and took it. We gotta find it and capture it somehow. Connett swore bitterly, his deep-set black eyes sullen and angry. It's a wonder the hellish creature didn't eat me in my sleep. Blair stared back, his pale eyes suddenly fear-struck. Maybe we'll have to find it. You find it, your pet. I've had all I want to do with it, sitting there for 7 hours at the counter clucking every few seconds, and you birds in here singing night music. It's a wonder I got any sleep. I'm going through to the ad building. Commander Gary ducked through the doorway, pulling on his tight belt. You won't have to. Van's roar sounded like the Boeing taking off downwind, so it wasn't dead? I didn't carry it off my arms, I assure you, Conan snapped. The last I saw, that split skull is using green goo like a squashed caterpillar. Doc just said our laws don't work, it's unearthly. Well, it's an unearthly monster with an unearthly disposition, judging by the face, wandering around with a split skull and brains oozing out. Norris and McCready appeared in the doorway, a doorway filling with other shivering men. Has anybody seen it coming over here? Norris asked innocently. About 4 feet tall, 3 red eyes, brains oozing. Hey, has anybody checked to make sure that it hasn't cracked idea of humor? If it is, I think we'll untie and trying Blair's pet around Conan's neck like the ancient mariner's albatross. It's no humor, Conan shivered. I wish it were. I'd rather wear. He stopped. A weird and wild howl shrieked through the corridors. The men stiffened abruptly and half-turned. I think it's been located, Conan finished. His dark eyes shifted with a queer unease. He darted back to his bunk in Paradise House to return almost immediately with a heavy .45 revolver and an ice axe. He hefted both gently as he started for the corridor toward the dog town. Blundered down the wrong corridor and landed among the huskies. Listen, the dogs have broken their chains. The half-terrorized howl of the dog pack changed to a wild hunting melee. The voices of the dogs thundered in narrow corridors, and through them came a long, rippling snarl of distilled hate, a shrill of pain, a dozen snarling yelps. Conan broke for the door. Close behind him, McCready, then Barkley, and Commander Gary came. Other men broke for the ad building, and weapons. The sledge house promontory in charge of Big Magnet's 5 cows started down the corridor in the opposite direction. He had a 6-foot handled, long-tinned pitchfork in mind. Barkley slid to a halt as McCready's giant bulk turned abruptly away from the tunnel leading to Dogtown and vanished off at an angle. Uncertainly, the mechanician wavered a moment, the fire extinguisher in his hands, hesitating from one side to the other. Then he was racing after Conant's broad back. Whatever McCready had in mind, he could be trusted to make it work. Conant stopped at the bend in the corridor. His breath hissed suddenly through his throat. Great God! The revolver exploded thunderously, 3 numbing, palpable waves of sound crashing through the confined corridors. 2 more. The revolver dropped to the hard-packed snow of the trail, and Barkley saw the ice axe shift into defensive position. Conant's powerful body blocked his vision, but beyond, he heard something mewing and, insanely, chuckling. The dogs were quieter. There was a deadly seriousness in their low snarls. Taloned feet scratched at the hard-packed snow. Broken chains were clinking and tangling. Conan shifted abruptly, and Barkley could see what lay beyond. For a second he stood frozen. Then his breath went out for a gusty curse. The thing launched itself at Conan. The powerful arms of the man swung the ice axe flat-side first at what might have been a hand. It scrunched horribly, and the tattered flesh, ripped by a half-dozen savage huskies, leapt to its feet again. The red eyes blazed with an unearthly hatred, an unearthly, unkillable vitality. Barkley turned the fire extinguisher on it. The blinding, blistering stream of chemical spray confused it, baffled it, together with the strange attacks of the huskies, not for long afraid of anything that did or could live, held it at bay. McCready wedged the men out of the way and drove down the narrow corridor packed with men unable to reach the scene. There was a sure foreplanned drive to McCready's attack. One of the giant blowtorches used in warming the plane's engines was in his bronzed hands. He roared gustily as he turned the corner and opened the valve. The mad mewing hissed louder. The dogs scrambled back from the 3-foot lance of blue-hot flame. Bar, get a power cable, run it in somehow, and a handle. We can electrocute this monster if I don't incinerate it. McCready spoke with an authority of planned action. Barkley turned down the long corridor to the power plant, but already before him, Norris and Van Wall were racing down. Barkley found the cable in the electrical cache in the tunnel wall. In a half-minute, he was hacking at it, walking back. Van Wall's voice rang out in a warning shout of power. as the emergency gasoline-powered dynamo thundered into action. Half a dozen other men were down there now, the coal kindling or going into the firebox of the steam power plant. Norris, cursing in a low, deadly monotone, was working with quick, sure fingers on the other end of Barkley's cable, splicing in a contractor in one of the power leads. The dogs had fallen back when Barkley reached the corridor bend, fallen back before a furious monstrosity that glared from baleful red eyes, mewing in trapped hatred. The dogs were a semicircle of red-dipped muzzles with a fringe of glistening white teeth, whining with a vicious eagerness that near matched the fury of the red eyes. McCready stood confidently alert at the corridor bend, the gustily muttering torch held loose and ready for action in his hands. He stepped aside without moving his eyes from the beast as Barkley came up. There was a slight, tight smile on his lean, bronzed face. Norris' voice called down from the corridor, and Barkley stepped forward. The cable was taped to the long handle of a snow shovel. The two conductors split and held 18 inches apart by a scrap of lumber, lashed at right angles across at the far end of the handle. Bare copper conductors, charged with 220 volts, glinted in the light of pressure lamps. The thing mewed and heated and dodged. McCready advanced to Barkley's side. The dogs beyond sensed the plan with the almost telepathic intelligence of trained huskies. Their whimpering grew shriller, softer. Their mincing steps carried them nearer. Abruptly, a huge, night-black Alaskan leapt into the trap thing. It turned squalling, saber-clawed, feet clashing. Barkley leapt forward and jabbed. A weird, shrill scream rose and choked out. The smell of burnt flesh in the corridor intensified. Greasy smoke curled up. The echoing pound of the gas-electric dynamo down the corridor became a slogging thud. The red eyes clouded over in a stiffening, jerking travesty of a face. Arm-like, leg-like members quivered and jerked. The dogs leapt forward, and Barkley yanked back his shovel-handed weapon. The thing on the snow did not move as the gleaming teeth ripped it open. Chapter 6. Gary looked about. The crowded room, 32 men, some tensed nervously, standing against the wall, some uneasily relaxed, some sitting, most perforce standing, as intimate as sardines. 32, plus the 5 engaged in sewing up wounded dogs, made 37, the total personnel. Gary started speaking. All right, I guess we're here. Some of you, 3 or 4 at most, saw what happened. All of you have seen that thing on the table and can get a general idea. Anyone hasn't, I'll lift. His hand strayed to the tarpaulin bulking over the thing on the table. There's an acrid odor of singed flesh seeping out of it. The men stirred restlessly. Hasty denials. It looks rather as though Charnock isn't going to lead any more teams, Gary went on. Blair wants to get on this thing and make some more detailed examination. We want to know what happened and make sure right now that this is permanently, totally dead, right? Conant grinned. Anybody that doesn't agree can sit up with it tonight. All right then. Blair, what can you say about it? What was it? Gary turned to the little biologist. I wonder if we ever saw its natural form. Blair looked at the covered mass. It may have been imitating the beings that built the ship, but I don't think it was. I think that was its true form. Most of us who were up here near the bend saw the thing in action. The thing on the table is the result. When it got loose, apparently, it started looking around. You can talk to good, still frozen as it was ages ago when the creature first saw it and froze. From my observations, while it was thawing out, and the bits of tissue I cut and hardened then, I think it was native to a hotter planet than Earth. It couldn't, in its natural form, stand the temperature. There is no life form on Earth that can live in Antarctica during the winter, but the best compromise is the dog. They found the dogs and somehow got near enough to Charnock to get him. The others smelled it, heard it, I don't know. Anyway, they went wild and broke chains and attacked it before it was finished. The thing we found that was part of Charnock, clearly only half dead, part of Charnock half digested by the jelly-like protoplasm of the creature, and part that remains of the thing were originally found, sort of melted down to basic protoplasm. When the dogs attacked it, it turned to its best fighting thing could think of, some otherworld beast apparently. Turned, snapped Gary. How? Everything is made up of jelly, protoplasm, and minute, submicroscopic things called nuclei, which control the bulk of the protoplasm. The thing was just a modification of that same worldwide plan of nature. Cells made up of protoplasm controlled by infinitely tinier nuclei. You physicists might compare an individual cell of any living thing with an atom. The bulk of the atom, the space-filling part, is made up of the electron orbits, but the character of the thing is determined by atomic nucleus. This isn't wildly beyond what we already know, it's just a modification we haven't seen before. It's just natural, as logical as any other manifestation life. It obeys the same exact laws. The cells are made of protoplasm, their character determined by nucleus. Only in this creature, cell nuclei can control those cells at will. It digested Jarnak, and as it digested, studied every cell of its tissue, and shaped its own cells to imitate them exactly. Parts of it, parts that had time to finish changing, are dog cells, but they don't have the dog cell nuclei. Blair lifted a fraction of the tarpaulin, a torn dog's leg with stiff gray fur protruded. That, for instance, isn't dog at all, it's imitation. Some parts I'm certain about, the nucleus was hiding itself, covering up with dog cell imitation nucleus. In time, not even a microscope would have shown the difference. Suppose, asked Norris bitterly, it had lots of time, and it would have been a dog. The other dogs would have accepted it. We would have accepted it. I don't think anything would have distinguished it, not a microscope, nor an X-ray, nor any other means. It is a member of a supremely intelligent race, a race that has learned the deepest secrets of biology and turned them into its use. What was it planning to do? Barkley looked at the humped tarpaulin. Blair grinned unpleasantly. The wavering halo of thin hair round his bald pate quivered in the stir of air. Take over the world, I imagine? Take over the world? Just it, all by itself? Conant guessed. Set itself up as a lone dictator? No. Blair shook his head. The scalpel he had been fumbling with in his bony fingers dropped. He bent to pick it up so that his face was hidden as he spoke. It would become the population of the world. Become the population of the world? Does it reproduce asexually or something? Blair shook his head and gulped. It doesn't have to. It weighed 85 pounds. Charnak weighed about 90. It would have become Charnak and have had 85 pounds left to become a Jack, for instance, or Chinook. It can imitate anything, that is, become anything. If it had reached the Antarctic Sea, it would have become a seal, maybe two seals. It might have attacked a killer whale and become either killers or a herd of seals. Or maybe it would have caught an albatross or a squaw gull and flown to South America. Norris cursed softly. Every time it digested something and imitated it, it would have had its original bulk left to start again. Blair finished. Nothing would kill it. It has no natural enemies because it becomes whatever it wants to. If a killer whale attacked, it would become a killer whale. If it was an albatross and an eagle attacked it, it would become an eagle. Or it might become a female eagle, go back, build a nest, and lay eggs. Are you sure that thing from hell is dead? Dr. Copper asked softly. Yes, thank heaven. The little biologist gasped. After they drove the dogs off, I stood there poking Barr's electrocution thing into it for 5 minutes. It's dead and cooked. Then we can only give thanks that this is Antarctica. There's not one single solitary thing for it to imitate except these animals in camp. Us. Blair giggled. They can imitate us. Dogs can't make 400 miles to sea. There's no food. There aren't any squaw gulls to imitate the season. There aren't any penguins this far inland. There's nothing that can reach the sea from this point, except us. We got brains, we can do it. Don't you see? It's got to imitate us. It's got to be one of us. That's the only way it can fly an airplane. Fly a plane for 2 hours and rule be all Earth's inhabitants. A world worth the taking, if it imitates us. It doesn't know yet. It didn't have the chance to learn. It was rushed, hurried, took the thing nearest to its own size. Look, on Pandora, I opened the box. And the only hope that can come out of this is that nothing can come out. You didn't see me. I did it. I fixed it. I smashed every magneto. Not a plane can fly. Nothing can fly. Blair giggled and laid down on the floor crying. Chief Pilot Van Wall made a dive for the door. His feet were fading echoes in the corridors as Dr. Copper bent unhurriedly over the little man on the floor. From his office at the end of the room, he brought something and injected a solution into Blair's arm. He might come out of it when he wakes up, he sighed, rising. McCready helped him lift the biologist to a nearby bunk. All depends on whether we can convince him that the thing is dead. Van Wall ducked into the shack, brushing his heavy blonde beard absently. I didn't think a biologist would do a thing like that up so thoroughly. He missed the spares in the second cache, that's all right. I smashed him. Commander Gary nodded. I was wondering about the radio. Dr. Copper snorted. You don't think it can leak out a radio wave, do you? You have 5 rescue attempts in the next 3 months if you stop the broadcast. The thing to do is talk loud and not make a sound. I wonder. McCready looked speculatively at the doctor. It might be like an infectious disease. Everything that drank any of its blood. Copper shook his head. Blair missed something, imitated, but has to a certain extent its own body chemistry, its own metabolism. If it didn't, it would become a dog and be a dog and nothing more, but it has to be an imitation dog. Therefore, you can detect it by serum tests. If its chemistry, since it comes from another world, must be so wholly, radically different that few cells such as gained by drops of blood would be treated as disease germs, a dog or human body. Blood. Will one of those imitations bleed? Norris demanded. Surely nothing mystic about blood. Muscle is about 90% water. Blood differs only in having a couple percent more water and less connective tissue. They'd bleed all right, Copper assured him. Blair sat up in his bunk suddenly. Conant. Where's Conant? The physicist moved over toward the little biologist. Here I am. What do you want? Are you? Giggled Blair. He lapsed back into the bunk corded with silent laughter. Conant looked at him blankly. Huh? Am I what? Are you there? Blair burst into gales of laughter. Are you, Conant? The beast wanted to be a man, not a dog. Chapter 7. Dr. Copper rose wearily from the bunk and washed the hypodermic carefully. The little tinkles it made seemed loud in the packed room, now that Blair's gurgling laughter had finally quieted. Copper looked toward Gary and shook his head slowly. Hopeless, I'm afraid. I don't think we can ever convince him the thing's dead now. Norris laughed uncertainly. I'm not sure you can convince me. Damn you, McCready. McCready? Commander Gary turned to look from Norris to McCready curiously. The nightmares, Norris explained. He had a theory about the nightmares when we had the secondary station after finding that thing. And that was? Gary looked at McCready levelly. Norris answered for him, jerkily, uneasily, that the creature wasn't dead, had sort of enormously slowed existence, an existence that permitted it nonetheless to be vaguely aware of passing time, of our coming after endless years. I had a dream it could imitate things. Well, Copper grunted, it can. Don't be an ass, Norris snapped. That's not what's bothering me. In the dream it could read minds, read thoughts and ideas and mannerisms. What's so bad about that? It seems to be worrying you more than the thought of joy we're going to have with a madman in an Antarctic camp. Copper nodded towards Blair's sleeping form. McCready shook his head slowly. You know that Conant is Conant, because we're not merely looks like Conant, which we're beginning to believe that beast might be able to do, but he thinks like Conant, talks like Conant, moves himself around as Conant does. That takes more than a mere body that looks like him. That takes Conant's own mind and thoughts and mannerisms. Therefore, though you know that the thing might make itself look like Conant, you aren't much bothered because you know it has a mind from another world, totally unhuman mind that couldn't possibly react and think and talk like a man we know, and do it so well as to fool us for a moment. The idea of the creature imitating one of us is fascinating but unreal, because it's too completely unhuman to deceive us. It doesn't have a human mind. As I said before, Norris repeated, looking steadily at McCready, you can say the damnedest things at the damnedest times. Will you be so good as to finish that thought, one way or another? Kinner, the scar-faced expedition cook, had been standing near Conant. Suddenly, he moved down the length of the crowd toward this familiar galley. He shook the ashes from the galley stove noisily. "It wouldn't do it no good," said Dr. Copper, softly, as though thinking aloud, "to merely look like something he was trying to imitate. It would have to understand its feelings, its reaction. It is unhuman, it has powers of imitation beyond any conception of man. A good actor, by training himself, can imitate another man's mannerisms well enough to fool most people. Of course, no actor could imitate so perfectly as to deceive men who had been living with the imitated one in complete lack of privacy of an Antarctic camp. That would take a superhuman skill." "Oh, you've got the bug too," Norris cursed softly. Conant, standing alone at one end of the room, looked about him wildly, his face white. A gentle eddying of the men had crowded them slowly down toward the other end of the room, so that he stood quite alone. "My God, will you two Jeremiah shut up?" Conant's voice shook. "What am I? Some kind of microscopic specimen you're dissecting? Some unpleasant worm you're discussing in the third person?" McCready looked up at him. His slowly twisting hand stopped for a moment. "Having a lovely time. Wish you were here. Signed, everybody." "Conant, if you think you're having a hell of a time, just move over to the under end for a while. You've got one thing we haven't. You know what the answer is. I'll tell you this, right now you're the most feared and respected man in Big Magnet." "Lord, I wish you could see your eyes," Conant gasped. "Stop staring, will you? What the hell are you going to do?" "Have you any suggestions, Dr. Copper?" Commander Gary asked steadily. "The present situation is impossible." "Oh, is it?" Conant snapped. "Come over here and look at that crowd. By heaven, they look exactly like a gang of huskies around a quarter bend. Benning, will you stop hefting that damned ice axe?" The coppery blade rang on the floor as the aviation mechanic nervously dropped it. He bent over and picked it up instantly, hefting it slowly, turning it in his hands, his brown eyes moving jerkily about the room. Copper sat down on the bunk beside Blair. The wood creaked noisily in the room. Far down a corridor, a dog yelped in pain. The dog driver's tense voices floated softly back. "Microscopic examination," said the doctor thoughtfully, "would be useless, as Blair pointed out. Considerable time has passed. However, serum tests would be definitive." "Serum tests? What do you mean exactly?" Commander Gary asked. "If I had a rabbit that had been injected with human blood, poison to rabbits, of course, as is the blood of any animal to save that of another rabbit, and the injections continued in increasing doses for some time, the rabbit would be human immune. If a small quantity of its blood were drawn off, allowed to separate in a test tube, and to the clear serum a bit of human blood were added, there would be a visible reaction, provided the blood was human. If cow or dog blood were added, or any protein material other than that one thing, human blood, no reaction would take place. That would prove definitely." "Can you suggest where I might catch a rabbit for you, Doc?" Norris asked. "That is nearer than Australia. We don't want to waste time going that far." "I know there aren't any rabbits in Antarctica," Copper nodded. "But that's simply the usual animal. Any animal except man would do. A dog, for instance. But it will take several days. Due to the greater size of the animal, considerable blood. 2 of us will have to contribute." "What would I do?" Gary asked. "That will make 2, Copper nodded. "I'll get to work on it right away." "What about Conant in the meantime?" Kenner demanded. "I'm going out that door to head off a raw sea before I cook him." "He may be human," Copper started. Conant burst out in a flood of curses. "Human? May be human? You damn sawbones. What in hell do you think I am?" "A monster," Copper snapped sharply. "Now shut up and listen." Conant's face drained of color, and he sat down heavily as the indictment was put in words. "Till we know, you know as well as we do, that we have reason to suspect the fact, and only you know how that question is to be answered. We may reasonably be expected to lock you up. If you are unhuman, you're a lot more dangerous than poor Blair there. I'm going to see that he's locked up thoroughly. I expect that this next stage will be a violent desire to kill you. All the dogs and probably all of us. When he wakes, he'll be convinced we're all unhuman, and nothing on the planet will ever change his conviction. It'll be kinder to let him die, but we can't do that, of course. He's going into one of the shacks, and you can stay in Cosmo's house with your cosmic ray apparatus, which is about what you do anyway. I've got to fix up a couple of dogs." Conant nodded bitterly. I'm human. Hurry that test. Your eyes. Lord, I wish you could see your eyes staring. Commander Gary watched anxiously as Clark, the dog handler, held the big brown Alaskan husky, while Copper began the injection treatment. The dog was not anxious to cooperate. The needle was painful, and already he'd experienced considerable needlework this morning. 5 stitches held closed that slash that ran from his shoulder across his ribs halfway down his body. One long fang was broken off short. The missing part was to be found half buried in the shoulder bone of the monstrous thing on the table in the ad building. How long will that take? Gary asked, pressing his arm gently. He was sore from the prick of the needle Dr. Copper had used to withdraw blood. Copper shrugged. I don't know, to be frank. I know the general method. I've used it on rabbits, but I haven't experimented with dogs. They're big, clumsy animals to work with. Naturally, rabbits are preferable and serve ordinarily. In civilized places, you can buy a stock of human immune rabbits from suppliers, and not many investigators take the trouble to prepare their own. What do they want with them back there? Clark asked. Criminology is one large field. A says he didn't murder B, but that the blood in his shirt came from killing a chicken. The state makes the test, and it's up to A to explain how its blood reacts on human immune rabbits, but not on chicken immunes. What are we going to do with Blair in the meantime? Gary asked weirdly. It's all right to let him sleep where he is for a while, but when he wakes up... Barkley and Benning are fitting some bolts on the door of the Cosmos house, Copper replied grimly. Conant's acting like a gentleman. I think perhaps the way the other men look at him makes him rather want privacy. Lord knows, heretofore we've all of us individually prayed for a little privacy. Clark laughed bitterly. Not anymore, thank you. The more the merrier. Blair, Copper went on, will also have privacy and locks. He's going to have a pretty definite plan in mind when he wakes up. Ever hear the old story of how to stop a hoof and mouth disease in cattle? If there isn't any hoof and mouth disease, there won't be any hoof and mouth disease, Copper explained. You get rid of it by killing every animal that exhibits it, and every animal that's been near the diseased animal. Blair's a biologist and knows that story. He's afraid if this thing is loose. The answer is probably pretty clear in his mind now. Kill everybody and everything in this camp before the squad goes, or a wandering albatross come in with a spring chance, and chances out this way and catches the disease. Clark's lips curled in a twisted grin. Sounds logical to me. If things get too bad, maybe we'd better let Blair get loose. It'd save us committing suicide. We might also make something of a vow that if things get bad, we see that that does happen. Copper laughed softly. Last man alive in Big Magnet wouldn't be a man, he pointed out. Somebody's got to kill those creatures that don't desire to kill themselves, you know. We don't have enough thermite to do it all at once, and detonite explosive wouldn't help much. I have an idea that even small pieces of one things would be self-sufficient. If, said Gary thoughtfully, they can modify their protoplasm at will, won't they simply modify themselves to birds and fly away? They could read all about birds and imitate their structure without even meeting them, or imitate perhaps birds of their own planet. Copper shook his head and helped Clark to free the dog. Man studied birds for centuries, trying to learn how to make a machine to fly like them. He never did do the trick. His final success came when he broke away entirely and tried new methods, knowing the general idea and knowing the detailed structure of the wing and bone and nerve tissue is something far, far different. As for the other world birds, perhaps, in fact, very probably, the atmospheric conditions here are so vastly different that their birds couldn't fly. Perhaps even the being came from a planet like Mars with such a thin atmosphere that there were no birds. Barkley came into the building, trailing a length of airplane control cable. It's finished, Doc. Cosmo House can't be opened from the inside. Now where do we put Blair? Copper looked toward Gary. There wasn't any biology building. I don't know where we can isolate him. How about East Cache? Gary said, after a moment's thought. Will Blair be able to look after himself or need attention? He'll be capable enough. We'll be the ones to watch out, Copper assured him grimly. Take a stove, a couple of bags of coal, necessary supplies, and a few tools to fix it up. Nobody's been out there since last fall, have they? Gary shook his head. If he gets noisy, I thought that might be a good idea. Barkley hefted the tools he was carrying and looked up at Gary. If the muttering he's doing now is any sign, he's going to sing away the night hours, and we won't like his song. What's he saying? Copper asked. Barkley shook his head. I don't care to listen much. You can if you want to, but I gathered that the blasted idiot had all the dreams McCready had, and a few more. He slept beside the thing when we stopped on the trail coming in from secondary Magnet, remember? He dreamt the thing was alive and dreamt more dreams, and his damn soul knew it wasn't all a dream, or had reason to. He knew it had telepathic powers that were stirring vaguely, and that it could not only read minds but project thoughts. They weren't dreams, you say. They were stray thoughts that thing was broadcasting, the way Blair's broadcasting his thoughts now, sort of telepathic muttering in its sleep. That's why he knew so much about its powers. I guess you and I, Doc, weren't so sensitive, if you want to believe in telepathy. I have to, Copper sighed. Dr. Ryan of Duke University had showed that it exists, shown that some are much more sensitive than others. Well, if you want to learn a lot of details, go listen on Blair's broadcast. He's driven most of the boys out the ad building. Kinner's rattling pans like a coal going down a chute. When he can't rattle a pan, he shakes ashes. By the way, Commander, what are we going to do this spring, now the planes are out of it? Gary sighed. I'm afraid our expedition is going to be a loss. We cannot divide our strength now. It won't be a loss if we continue to live and come out of this, Copper promised him. We find we've made, if we can get it under control, it's important enough. The cosmic ray data, magnetic work, and atmospheric work won't be greatly hindered. Gary laughed mirthlessly. I was just thinking of the radio broadcasts, telling half the world about the wonderful results of our exploration flights, trying to fool men like Byrd and Ellsworth back home there that we're doing something. Copper nodded gravely. They'll know something's wrong, but men like that have judgment enough to know we wouldn't do tricks without some sort of reason, and will wait for our return to judge us. I think it comes to this. Men who know enough to recognize our deception will wait for our return. Men who haven't discretion and faith enough to wait will not have the experience to detect any fraud. We know enough of the conditions here to put through a good bluff. Just so they don't send rescue expeditions, Gary prayed. When, if, we're ever ready to come out, we'll have to send word to Captain Forsyth to bring down a stock of magnetos with him when he comes down, but never mind that. You mean if we don't come out? Asked Barkley. I was wondering if a nice running account of an eruption or an earthquake via radio with a swell wind-up by using a stick of decant under the microphone would help. Nothing, of course, would entirely keep people out. One of those swell melodramatic last man alive scenes might make him go easy, though. Gary smiled with a genuine humor. Is everybody in camp trying to figure that out, too? Copper laughed. What do you think, Gary? We're confident we can win out, but not too easy about it, I guess. Clark grinned up from the dog he was petting into calmness. Confident, did you say, Doc? Thank you. That was part 2 of Who Goes There. Thank you for listening, and good night.